Hello, it's Alex. We're on a drive here, and I wanted to talk about inspiration. Inspiration, heroes, influences, kind of my thoughts on all of that stuff. A bit on me. I grew up in the age of YouTube, right? When I was like 6 years old, YouTube was just coming out. It was this like very unique new place where there was a lot of information and content on there. And so that became sort of the portal into the world for me. Like that's where I was getting opinions from. That's where I was learning all sorts of things, being exposed to games and ideas and all sorts of stuff. And that has kind of stuck around with me for my entire life. I think as time has gone on, the people that I listen to online or in person has changed as I've grown and developed or moved to like different parts of my life. And I just kind of wanted to share that experience and what I've found interesting about that, what I've learned from moving around and getting knowledge from people and building myself up. And I think it kind of boils down to imitating, listening, then imitating what you think works, copying that into your life, and then as you go along, you see and you modify what isn't working and get rid of it if it is no longer compatible with the way you live. And this is I think this is how you develop, not from first principles, a composite worldview and way of life, right? This is sort of like the composite identity here, that draws from all these different places a bunch of unearned knowledge and then tries to coerce it into something more reasonable, right? And I think in today it's easier than ever. It's easier than ever to just listen to opinions of random people on the internet or find whatever is culturally dominant and just run with that and just go along with that. And we would call that the the NPC mindset. Of that is something that you have not really put in any thought yourself into or lived, but it is just the thing that you're getting by default based on what kind of people that you interact with. You find that this is for, people are not 100% NPC or not, as we would say. People have many different opinions, lots of levels of which are unearned or earned, things that they have picked up from one place or another, or ones that they have kind of, cobbled together on their own. But it's, I think what has become the real cultural norm is to just accept those opinions and points of view from strangers on the internet or just the general culture, without having really done the legwork to understand what that means for yourself. And I'll give you some practical examples from my life. Because again, I'm not trying to just malign people or name call people. Saying something. Some people are NPCs. Anyone that I don't agree with is an NPC. That's not the point of this exercise. I think. The point really is to understand and have a coherent, consistent worldview with the framework to not just be immediately blinded into accepting other people's maybe other people's beliefs that are incompatible with your own or are not founded in something that will make it actionable, useful for you, right? That's the whole point. This is a little bit inspired by Scott Adams' book Loserthink, I guess. So here you go. This is me describing to you unearned knowledge, from someone else's book. But we have to draw the line somewhere. We're just going to keep going in circles here. So here are Uh, here's an example. I think that I had, from when I was just like a little kid, when I was like 7 years old. The dominant culture when I was like in elementary school was this sort of move towards like internet atheism. Basically, this was like a huge movement that you were seeing on Reddit, online, wherever, and that kind of that that worldview of just like flat out rejecting religion and spirituality in favor of, like quote unquote science and logic. That like, even as like a small child, that got made its way into me, and um, I remember my dad was trying to get, little 7-year old me to read, to just like read a book with him. It was Delaire's book of Greek mythology. This is a fantastic book, by the way. This is, that's why I'm bringing up. I remember this example here, and I remember, like I had as a kid, I had this like visceral reaction against it of I was not, I didn't want to be exposed to any sort of religion or mythology, anything with like gods or monsters, stuff like that. So, where was I? Um, what when this thing when I was a kid, um, like I had just inherited this belief that made me feel like I was so allergic, incompatible, scared of learning, being exposed to these things. When in reality, like that was not a useful adaptation. That was not even an adaptation that I had really been um, had come to, obviously, because I was 7 years old. And after pushing through that and actually being exposed uh, to that work, things got. I became incredibly interested in mythology, and folklore, and that's become probably one of like the most key parts of my identity and worldview is knowing these things and having like a deep appreciation for them. Uh, and so that's like the okay, all right, children are stupid. That kind of shit happens all the time. Example, but you also I can try to give you some for the more my more adult, more recent experiences, right? And I think it's come down to a having this fundamental problem where there are two competing sort of like ways of conducting yourself when creating stuff. So, oh man, sorry, I keep kind of getting calls I've got to take. Um, I have these two competing worldviews that I'm trying to reconcile here, which are the ship fast and often, to validate ideas, versus the go make sure you build something of quality, and that quality is what is going to elevate you and allow you to win from a business success perspective there, right? And this comes in conflict almost every single day. Both of these are views that I obviously did not create myself. These are ideas, and the ideas have you, as I believe, what is it? Jordan Peterson says, Nietzsche says, or something. Yeah. So that's another one. Like I think in my previous job, a company culture that was very, very slow. My role, the part that I played was the guy who was trying to speed things up, to add efficiency, to get things moving more quickly and reduce the iteration time to be able to better compete out in the world. And at my new job, I won't say much, but it's very it's now a much faster paced place, and I find myself being or feeling like I need to be the one to more pump the brakes or at least go in and ensure that the quality is still there, so that whenever we get the opportunity, we have something that is maintainable or can be turned into a real product, right? And these are two worldviews that are on opposite ends of the spectrum, and in my personal my personal projects and development that I've done, I've fought against these things as well. I spend a lot of time trying to learn how to do game development from scratch, from the very bottom level, to understand all the parts of how the computer is working, how my program is interacting with the hardware and the OS and all these different layers of things. But I feel this pull as well to just, how should we say, go just unleash a bunch of slop to get something out the door that is pulling in revenue to ship whatever it is, little apps or bits and pieces of things, because maybe there isn't the time anymore to do these things. And obviously this all ties into AI and a lot of the big cultural debates and topics in in entrepreneurship and software world, all these different places, and I always feel like I'm being torn one way and then the other, and I really just am trying to find my way through that storm, to to see what is the ground truth of adopting these mindsets, of what benefits you get, what problems arise, as opposed to just accepting one of these ideologies, these worldviews, uncritically, right? Because it's incredibly easy to one way buy into the giant this giant AI hype cycle machine, and that it is that this is now just a new paradigm shift, all these things, while I'm also seeing just out in public a whole total lack of a real lack of results that I'm satisfied with, or lots of questions coming up, as to what actually is happening when you do these things, and if what level of knowledge do you care about with these tools, how much things like performance, and being a DevOps engineer is my full-time job, but performance numbers, for stupid stuff like build times and test times and stuff, is always in my face all the time, and so I'm always it's very interesting to see, right? But it's I think also it's very easy to just accept the perhaps Luddite position and reject the use of the AI technology or any new technology, and continue trying to do things the way that worked before, But I think the real answer is that nobody really knows how well the thing works. There are a lot of people that and when you use the tool, you can use it to maybe get you some initial knowledge or some sort of thing to stand on. But as soon as I become familiar with a problem, things start to make less and less sense. It starts to make less and less sense to use the AI to solve things, because it's just not performing the way I want, or it's giving me just flat out incorrect or unuseful, or and a lot of the time overly long versions of things, especially with code. AI is very yappy, as we all know, and with code, it's just like it's ridiculous. And like in my current personal game project, I had AI come up with some initial versions of stuff like the Windows main and fallback stuff, as well as like the DX11 pipeline. And I found that basically I've had to rewrite all of those things from scratch. So I mean, it was useful in getting me up to speed of like, here are some things that you can do, but it becomes very clear very quickly, again, within like a few days of working a problem, or working on a code base, like what is wrong with it, and what like is just unmaintainable, unkeepable, because it's growing out of your control. And that is what I see. And that is the knowledge that I feel, I hope that I have earned, and come out with a more nuanced take on and stance on how to use the tool, rather than just just go all in on just vibe coding the world, or rejecting using LLMs completely, right? Views are my own. Views are my own, not views of any company I'm employed at, whatever. I think I need to disclaim that. I have no idea, but I feel like I do. So that is so that's in my day-to-day life. That is how I am trying to rationalize and use these things, and remain skeptical of just blanket statements or ideologies that I hear, no matter which way of a debate that they fall on, because I think it is a real challenge. It's so easy, and so it kind of we'll go back a layer, I guess, back to the I had some original point for this this talk before we just went down into the AI rabbit hole, because I think the whole world is just always going down the AI rabbit hole nowadays. Let's see. Oh yeah, sorry. Well, keep on. This is going to be a really annoying one for me to edit later. So in terms of inspiration, of like where to get the initial versions of ideas from that you can test out, and go in, try to work them into your own life, or figure out if they're worth, that's worth doing so, right? So what do I do? And so like again, like I've described, YouTube is probably my first source of information. Long form YouTube programming podcast, or not programming, but YouTube, like podcasts or video essays, usually from people that I am familiar with, from them having done something useful, right? So it comes from having actually made something, having used their worldview has been used to create something, and from that you can kind of get a sense for how effective their way of life is, and what has made it work, right? And so we'll look at someone who's very interesting to me. And we'll look at a couple of people. These are people I've spoken to and actually been rather close with in the past. So we've got two YouTube game dev guys. Thomas Randall, Randy, GG, Primal Randy, whatever his name is, and Ted Bendixson, as well as Casey Muratori. So that's three guys. I haven't spoken to Casey, but I've spoken to the other two. So all three of these guys, they have moved their way, or have gone to a programming style that is coming. Culturally, they're being, Ted and Randy are being influenced by Casey, by his Handmade Hero series, where he does game dev programming from scratch in a procedural style, with C style, C++ to get some of the nice compiler features of C++. All this sounds very familiar, because I am the next leg down. So again, this is all very these are all very personal examples. So both Ted and Randy at this point have shipped games, and they have shipped games with this style and have made some sort of side or maybe even main career out of also doing like YouTube content of like game dev content. And I think it's like no competition that Randy's content is highly entertaining, very viewable for just like a casual viewer. I think that his stuff is really just fun to watch, and I think it's very good for that like casual audience. But if you look at Ted's stuff, I think his target is people who are really trying to buy into that development style and what that really means of being a solo developer / game dev, doing things the Handmade Hero way, right? And the value becomes in describing what are the positive and negative things that you get out of the very specific behaviors that come along with that development practice. That is something that is actionable and useful for other people that are looking into to what's going on there, right? I found that personally incredibly valuable, and I have come back to a lot of Ted's videos several times just because they're frank and honest about like what is about what has come about from this combination of his way of life with the source from Casey Muratori, right? And that content is not as like mass appeal as I think Randy's videos are, right? Randy is incredibly I think gifted at the writing and editing style, that just having a style for entertainment YouTube content that is incredibly watchable, and makes some of these seemingly very boring things for entertaining. But it's it wasn't quite as time has gone on. I've watched his stuff less and less. I think he switched over mostly to just programming streams like full time, as far as I can tell. Because I think his priorities have changed from to really focus on the game dev and shipping as opposed to the content creation, because that was and still is, I think, a very frequent criticism of him. If you go on like any Randy video, the comment section's all, okay, yeah, but it's been eight years or whatever, and you haven't shipped a game. And now he has shipped a game. And so things change a little bit, right? And so that proof of this is what you actually got out of having that worldview is so important. And that is, I think that that is what separates like the people who are just yapping into the void, like me, like myself, from people who are actually offering like useful, good advice on something of like that. A good advice is advice that has been tested, that has been tested and that you understand how it came to be. So and let's pull back again. Let's pull back again. So I think you need to see the proof. You wouldn't and like this is the common thing that like you would hear like a scammer's going to sell you a course on how to make buttloads of money, and they don't actually have buttloads of money. They're just using it as like a grifting operation. Right? This is a very extreme example, and that is that is bad advice probably. That is probably a signal of the advice you're going to get is going to be not good, because the person has not successfully followed it themselves. So that means why would you listen, believe them? And then after that, if you have that proof, there's still this added aspect of you may not quite understand all of the things that come with it. People's worldviews and experiences of doing something successfully, of getting somewhere, are very nuanced and personal, right? As everyone's doing things in slightly different ways, and so you have to have that filter on listening to what they say, or you're not going to be able to get all of those nuances, or just end up in a situation where you're still cobbling together bits and pieces that are incoherent, that don't work. And that I think just comes from a lot of time of listening to the same person, just relay their story and like the specifics of how they got to where they were, how they succeeded with their achieve whatever success they did, right? And that is, I think that's a step that I think like that a lot of the that like YouTube and X are very good at is establishing the this reputation behind people, because they're the person on the channel or the account, they to get repeated viewing, they require some kind of like credibility. It's all very personal, like that brand, their personal brand is always like out there. It's at stake for any good for any advice they give, right? And that's something that is just that you just don't get in like short form content, which is why I I have a number of problems with short form, but I think that is my that is the number one, is that it's very similar to like getting anonymous responses from like people on like Reddit or 4chan, is that with the sort of fleeting nature of like a TikTok, you're scrolling to the next one incredibly quickly. You're not really you may recognize like people's faces or their sort of shtick, but you're not getting enough continued exposure with that person to really know to understand their reputation and know of what they're saying it like makes sense, is real, or has been earned. That's context that you totally lose when a person is anonymous, or you're just not spending enough time with them, right? Of like credibility like must be earned, and the only way to do that is just repeated exposure and trying to understand their perspective. And it's expensive to do that, obviously. It takes real like a lot of time, a lot of like dedicated energy to go through whatever someone's like backlog of ideas and stuff. It used to be people write books or whatever, and that would be some sort of way of establishing credibility, right? Of person sat down and thought about something, worked long enough, did all like the bullshit publishing work to get their ideas on paper. Maybe that is that means something. You would think, but that's not always the case. People publish books full of BS all the time. So yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to. This is a very nuanced idea that I have been nurturing for some time, and I think part of it is obviously it's backwards rationalizing of my own media consumption habits, that they're the best, that they're the most optimal, obviously. But I think, like again, it's if I didn't think they were the best, then why would I? I think as a follow up, next time I'll talk about, I think in more specifics, about some of the people that have influenced me, if that sounds interesting at all. And which people I've decided to stop listening to, also equally important. And kind of like what that looks like. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Like, comment, and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye.